Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. As always, my name is John, and we're going to be starting off the podcast a little differently here. You will hear the intro music here momentarily, but I did need to come on and deliver some unfortunate news. My partner did have a medical emergency occur over the Thanksgiving weekend, and so this is me coming on to say that I'm going to take a step back from the podcast for the time being, just because I do need to help him out here for the foreseeable future. So, not to worry, Dean has a lot of things planned and is going to continue doing the recordings. I'll be helping out where possible, but for the time being, I am going to be taking a step back here. I'm sure I'll see some of you around the community at some point here in the future, and of course, I will come back once time permits. But for the time being, keep having fun playing your sneaky decks through the seasons, and I'll see you later.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. This is Dean, and as mentioned in the beginning of the episode, John is taking a step back from the podcast. He and his partner are in our thoughts and prayers, but we do want to go forward with this podcast and still talk about what we're seeing in the local meta and have a meta discussion and how the rogue decks play at the more competitive side. So with that, I'm going to bring on a temporary guest host, and we've already talked about some ideas to kind of help improve this channel and this podcast. So everyone, why don't you say hello to my brother Devin? Devin, say hello to everyone.
Hi guys, thank you for welcoming me back. I wish it was under better circumstances. I know you and I were talking off mic for a very long time of just having me come back every once in a while. But I'm glad that you and John both allowed me to fill the gap while John is taking his leave, and for me to fill his shoes and keep his seat warm and have everything moving forward. So when he is ready to come back, he can just keep on going.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have some ideas on how to improve this podcast, and one of it is actually doing more content specifically with YouTube. So I talked to Devin, and Devin is going to take the reins on this, and we're going to start actually posting more showcase videos. So going forward on the Friday after the episode uploads, we're going to do a showcase of the Rogue Deck of the Week. So instead of you just hearing me and John or me and Devin talk about a Rogue Deck, we're actually going to show it off and kind of talk about the mechanics a little more in depth and see how it plays on both the casual ladder, because sometimes you just want to have fun playing with other off the wall decks, and we also want to see how it works with the meta as we go on the rank ladder, as I'm gonna try to do that a little more. And yeah, we're excited to see how this goes.
Yeah, and like since we've already kind of started talking about it from like last week, I already have a couple decks lined up. The whole goal is that I'll be working on these videos and doing some play matches with these decks to complement what you guys talked about, or what we will talk about on the podcast here, and then we'll kind of look at decks that operate within their metas. So if there's a fun deck that kind of made a splash at a big tournament, we'll go look into that and see how it plays and how it feels. Or we'll just go on to look at some online tournaments and see if there's any cool ideas that were given some fame by just having a high placement on an online tournament.
Yeah, and I'm excited. Live is a great resource to do this. We don't have to really invest in the physical cards. I have a pretty decent account, so we can just select whatever deck we want to do and just try it out, and you can see us either succeed or fail with it in our video. So it's going to be a fun adventure for sure. And when John comes back, Devin has agreed to stay on and kind of, like I said, take a reign on that. So he'll be a third member of this podcast, doing that, helping us grow with it. But yeah, we're excited to see how you all like this new content, and yeah, we're excited to play more on live. But speaking of live, it had a complete reset just last week, and it's been interesting.
How so?
So I grinded all the way to Arceus. I got to, I think, 554 or something like that. I got the Arceus. I stopped. I was proud of myself. I never even get above Ultra Ball typically because I don't really play a lot. And then a couple hours later, I log back on and I'm seeing my friend Pikachu in front of me. I'm like, what is going on? And then I forgot. Complete reset for everyone. So they added that new ELO system. So you grind your way back up, and then once you hit Arceus, that's when you hit the ELO, and you only play against other Arceus players. So I'm excited to see that. I know a lot of people were asking for a more complete ranked system, so this is a step in the right direction for that. It's not a perfect system, but it's definitely better than what we had currently.
Yeah, and a lot of people when they play online, when Pokemon Trading Card Game Online was a thing, it had an ELO system at all levels, really. So it's going back to a very well-established kind of rank ladder system. ELO is not unusual. A lot of other games use ELO. And the whole idea of it is that you get to play other players of similar skill. And even sometimes you work on players of similar hotness in terms of streaks and stuff. So like if you find a deck and you're just on a high win streak, it's going to match you up against another player with a high win streak as well. So almost like a glorified Swiss kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I want to start grinding on the rank ladder again, especially as I prepare for Toronto and just other events. I know it's not a perfect way of getting ready for big tournaments, but I think this will be a more comprehensive and more accurate representation of what you may see skill wise. So we're excited to see that. And yeah, I think Pokemon's listening to its player base and trying to improve the client the best as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of criticism to live, and I think hopefully this is a step in the right direction as well.
Yeah, so, but with that being said, I know some players use this to get ready for regionals and other major tournaments. And speaking of which, we had 2 of those this past weekend. So there was a special event in Bogota and a regional in Perth, Australia. So Devin, which one do you want to start talking about first?
Let's talk about Perth. It's a regional, had a little higher attendance, and I think a little more storyline to it.
So yeah, I'm pulling up everything right now, but yeah, so Perth, a lot of people may know, I think it has one of the more successful playtest groups. You have the big names, right? Brent Tonneson, Natalie Miller, Henry Brand, Kawe Kababe. There's a lot of known players in this region. And let's see how they ended up with this tournament. So I'm pulling up Perth, and whoa.
Yeah, that testing group did all right, but I think there's a bigger story to the regional than just the same people winning the Oceania region.
Yeah, I'm making sure I'm clicking on the right tab. I see a lot of Japanese players in the top here. And yeah, it says Perth right here. So yeah, the Japanese showed up strong.
Yeah, and I think part of the story could be, and this is definitely my sports fan in me, of stealing a bid coming into play here. It's someone outside of Oceania had got the automatic qualification to Worlds. And some people may be happy, some people may be like, this is not fair, but it's the way the system is. And I think, honestly, kudos to the players for doing the traveling to a different region and doing well.
Yeah, and I will say it wasn't won by a no-name Japanese player. It was won by a player named Kaito. And if you look at his accomplishments, he's no stranger to the TPCI scene. He played at NAIC this past season, got 22nd at Dortmund. He played in an Australian regional last year and got 10th. So he is not new to playing against um, the players in the TPCI regions. He just so happens to live in Japan and has to go through the Japanese circuit just like any other Japanese player. And honestly, I'm glad that he won. He did not, with his successful runs in the TPCI tournaments last year, he actually did not qualify for Worlds with the Japan method. So now he actually has an opportunity to go against the top players of the world this upcoming August in Anaheim. So I'm really happy that he won. He really deserves it. And he did it with a Gardevoir deck, and not just like the Turbo Gardevoir that we've been seeing popping up. It's with the regular slow, take your time Gardevoir.
Yeah, it's more of a consistency build. I think it's definitely a build that the medium and long game was put into account instead of going turbo gas. So I don't think he's ever going to lose a game because he can't get set up.
No,
I think
yeah.
he is never not. He will never not be able to win. Like, he will never put himself in a lose situation. And I think that's very smart when it comes to best 2 out of 3.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, in the Japanese circuit, most, if not all, their tournaments are best of 1 the whole entire time. Like, they don't do like, it's not like going to a cup here in the United States or in a TPCI region where, okay, Swiss rounds may be best of 1, and then once you make top cut, it's best of 3. Their top cuts and even the finals are best of 1, so they're used to playing something a little more consistent base, a little more not, I wouldn't say not risky, but they need to make sure they have a chance of winning just on the get go. Versus
Yeah, because when they lose, they're out of the tournament. Like, it's almost the point of it's almost playing single elimination from round 1.
Yeah,
that's how cutthroat their tournament is.
Yeah, because it's cutthroat just to get in the tournament because a lot of these are on a lottery system. Their league championships are very hard to get into. When you look at it, it's like, oh, they had 64 players, and like, oh, that's nothing. Well, no, they have 64 players, and you had to apply to get into that of the 64 players. So it's a very much different system than what we have here in the States and with playing with the Pokemon International way of playing. So kudos to Kaito to winning with Gardevoir. And then we see 3 other Japanese players in the top 8 playing Claw of Tropicos, playing Iron Quad Thorns, and what was the other one? And another Gardevoir list too. So these Japanese players showed up big time in Australia. Not saying the top Australians didn't show. They were there. The other half was Australians. But yeah, just seeing someone outside of the region take it all, it's an exciting storyline, and I'm excited to see how other Japanese players take advantage of this new role and new system going forward.
Yeah, and we've seen it. This is the second time this season that they've gone to a regional outside of Japan and taken the win, which means they get their automatic qualification. So I think we're going to see more and more players travel outside of their regions and try to go for the win instead of trying to be a high rank and within the regional for their berths kind of deal.
Yeah, and I kind of feel bad for the Australians because we were talking right before this podcast, kind of like what you're saying, stealing the bid. It's hard for the Oceanic region to make Worlds because only the top 20 players make it, I believe. And this is like one of their I wouldn't say easiest opportunity to guarantee an invite, because once you win a regional, you're out of that top X, so you're kind of sitting pretty. Now, like, they still have to fight. They didn't win a home regional, and they only get maybe 1-2 more of these. So it's tough to be someone from Australia and New Zealand to make it to Worlds this year.
Yeah, and I think that's just going to continue to happen. I think Oceania is being limited more and more. They lost their international championship because there used to be 4, now there's only 3. They're getting the amount of regionals given to them cut down. So it's going to be one of those situations where every single championship point is going to matter in that region because one less bid is out there for them. Like they're either going to have to be forced to travel or forced to just do better on all aspects of the qualification structure. So cups, challenges, and even just any other regionals they could attend. So it'll be interesting to watch and interesting to see the narrative coming out of the Oceanic region when it comes to world qualification later in the season. But it's something that will be a conversation point where maybe if someone misses by a handful of points, it's, well, I could have, so-and-so could have, not even the person who misses out is going to be the one talking. It was like, I'll use an example of Natalie Miller or Jordan Palmer, who they could have qualified differently, and that spot could have been open to somebody else. So it's very interesting to see what happens. It's a long-term story for sure, and it's something that it's going to be talked about when it comes to revamping the system, because this is not the first and it won't be the last time this happens.
Yeah, so we'll see how all this goes. But looking at the rest of the day 2 meta structure, honestly, it's the same old, with Drago and Charizard definitely being the top 2 decks by a long shot, being at about 23-24% of the meta share in day 2 each, and then number 3 being Snorlax Stall at only 9%. But there's nothing new, nothing really that pops out to me. Obviously, I gravitate towards the Cloth Trapicos list. That's one of my favorite decks right now. And there's actually a very interesting inclusion in that list. They play one Hisuian Zoroark V. That is definitely,
Really?
yeah, that's definitely unique. So what this card has, what I'm thinking they do with this card is, if you go second, you can attack with the Zoroark for free. So if you whiff your energy, you can still do Void Return for 30. And if you have your bench set up, you can do Void Return, and you have to switch that Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. You can either bring up your Petront and do the poison damage that way, or they also play a one of Fluttermane. So you can switch into the Fluttermane and shut down whatever is in their active and kind of disrupt your opponent a little bit that way as well. So you're either doing the 110 damage with the Petront, or you're not letting them use abilities when they go back into their turn. So I think that's interesting, especially since this is now a established archetype and hasn't really been changing in the last couple weeks. So seeing this change is very interesting.
Hey all you rogues out there, we just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you to our sponsor, For Honor and Glory. They are a great support to us and have all the things you need related to Pokemon, Magic, D&D, Warhammer, and more. You can go over to forhonorandglory.com and use discount code ROGUE24. That's discount code ROGUE24 at forhonorandglory.com for 10% off your entire online order. All right, let's get back to talking about those sneaky decks.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a couple other like one-off techs in here that's very interesting, but it makes sense with the inclusion of Latias EX, where you have all these different tech abilities with these different unique ways of drawing, I guess is the best way to describe it. Like the Regidraco is a very interesting way to draw, and you're like, well, why is it there? You just draw more and then retreat for free because of Latias EX. So it's very, very utility based. It feels almost like boxy, but you have the primary attackers very well defined, and you have all the support mods behind it. So very interesting to see how or if this archetype evolves anymore. I feel like it's almost to the point where it's almost optimized, and now it's just will get enough attention by enough players.
Yeah, so we'll see how this goes into Toronto when we get into our Toronto discussion. But going through the rest of the list, I'm not really seeing anything super unique.
And I think that's going to be something we see in both events is the lack of diversity in terms of challenging calls or gutsy calls. It's a lot of safe plays. It's a lot of just playing it close to the chest, I think. And I think part of it is with Perth, it's you had to get your points. So you had to play very conservatively in terms of being your deck choice had to be very conservative, something they either felt comfortable with or felt like he was going to do the best. And then with Bogota, I think it's the same way. We will see a lot of very conservative deck calls. Like it was a lot of, you know what, this is established, this is safe. I'm going to get my points this way.
Yeah, so speaking of Bogota, let's go and let's talk about that. So as we saw a Japanese outer region player win Perth, the Bogota results are on finally on Limitless. I've been checking for the last couple days, and it's kind of the opposite of Perth, where it's mainly in region players. Like you have the sprinkling of American players, and then Andres Flores is countryless. It just says country.fm, so that's funny. But overall, it's all LATAM players, which, don't get me wrong, there's great LATAM players. Some of the best players are from Latin America. And yeah, you only see one out-of-region player being Owen Dalgard playing Regidrago, and he got third, him being a first-year master. But everyone else is from South America or Mexico.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of different things that could be in the factor that there's a lot of North American players looking toward Toronto, so there's no need to double dip on terms of travel for that, because yes, Toronto is in the North American region, but it's an international trip for a lot of American players. But I also think part of it is also it's coming off the Thanksgiving holiday in the States. So a lot of players wanted to spend time with family and didn't want to focus on that weekend. That was really an off weekend for a lot of people because of those two factors. But it's just we're probably going to see less and less North American players travel to Latin America for SPEs now. I think they're really going to focus on the North American schedule and maybe some European slots and European regional schedules, just because it's easier travel there.
Yeah, I wondered it's also because of the pricing you get with a special event versus a regional. Really, just being the cash pricing. That is, so with the special event, for those who don't know, you get the points, you get a world invite if you win, and I believe you get the product pricing, but you don't get the cash pricing. So the winner of this tournament, Francisco, he didn't get the $10,000. He just got his world's invite and what other product he got for competing. So I wonder if that played a factor as well.
It probably did. Like, you don't want to travel to Colombia from anywhere in the United States and not get an investment if this is really going to be treated as a business trip. So it probably did. But you never know. Everyone travels for different reasons. We don't want to say that the cash is king, but I think a couple different factors definitely played into the fact that we don't see a large American contingent. We see a lot of homegrown, like, regional contingent here, and just and again we go back to the point where the deck selections were very cautious as well. Like, there's a lot of lack of story here. Like, it's all right, Draco won, Ancient Box got second, and then like the rest of the top 8 is normal. This is what you expect when you're evaluating a tier list. So
yeah,
hopefully
Yeah, that Roaring Moon getting second is pretty. I wouldn't say it's surprising. It's a good deck. We just haven't seen it played that much, so I'm glad that it's finally getting recognition again. Um, a deck that I'm seeing on here that we have not seen in a while is the Chien-Pao Baxcalibur deck. That
Yeah, and I would say that deck had two people in the day two, and they both finished in the top 16.
Yeah.
So it had a good conversion from day two to top placements for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at their list. One played the B Barrel version, and one played the Dunsparce for the draw power. So it's interesting how they got like 13th and 14th playing two different draw engines. So it's cool that we finally see this coming back. So maybe we may see Chien-Pao in Toronto, maybe. But other than that, same old, nothing new. So we'll see how we take these results and how Toronto goes this upcoming weekend.
Yeah. But there was one more event that happened this weekend. Dean, why don't you tell us about that?
So yeah, I competed in the For Honor and Glory Quarter 2 Cup. Shout out to For Honor and Glory, who is our sponsor store for this podcast. They really support us, and they're good friends of mine and Devin and John. And so yeah, I went over there, competed, and I made my goal of finally top cutting a cup. And more than that, actually won the cup, which is a total surprise to me, to be honest.
So let's talk about your day and talk about how you got to that win. So what was your round one?
So round one was against my good friend Justin, one of the Justins, and he was playing the Miraidon list. So I was actually on stream for that because For Honor and Glory does a stream. So if you want to see that result, spoiler alert, I did not do good. I lost. But it was fun. I got it somewhat close. I got down to 2 prizes. So I was playing the Cloth Trapagos list. As everyone knows, I've been on the Cloth train for a while, and I wanted to see how the Trapagos version felt. I've been playing the vanilla list for a couple challenges now, doing somewhat well with it. I got a couple top 4s and second place with it, so I took a crack at the Trapagos version. And with the Miraidon, it's basically whoever gets the first 2 prize cards wins. It's very hard to catch up with that, especially with the Iron Hands. And Justin played that deck really well.
All right, so you lost your round one. What about your round two?
So going into round 2, I play against a Charizard player. And that one's another like 50-50 matchup for the Cloth Trapagos. Yes, I do play the Hisuian Electrode, but the 330 HP on Zard is so hard to overcome. Luckily, I was able to kind of get some KOs early on and just disrupt my opponent to where I was able to win that match. So going from round 2, walked out 1-1. So that was a fun match.
Okay. So then you had a round 3. So you're 1-1 after 2 rounds. So round 3, how does that go?
So I go against a Regidrago player. One of the many Regidragos I played that day. And he starts off with Regidrago. He does some things, attach an energy, and passes. And I just took advantage of that situation. Going second, I was able to set up my board and able to donk him. I got my cloth out, was able to do 210 damage. He was poisoned, get the damage tick in, and game lasted maybe a minute.
Oh wow! So
yeah.
So how many people attended this cup?
There were 16 masters. So 16
16
masters
masters.
and I think 3 junior seniors. So 19
All right.
people total. So
you had 4 rounds of Swiss.
5 actually.
5 rounds because 16's the round kicker.
Yep.
All right. So you're now 2-1 going into round 4. So what was your round 4 matchup?
So I go against another good friend of mine, and it was Marissa. If you all want to go back, we interviewed her being a pokey parent and how does that look like, and having a child that's super competitive. Her son was actually at Bogota at the time competing, so we were talking about that as we were playing round 4. And she was playing Raging Bolt. And her list was kind of tough for me because she played the Ancient Booster Capsule, which means I can't poison her Raging Bolt at all. So I had to find other ways to knock it out. So typically, I can get away with okay, I have at least the poison damage addition to it, and I couldn't even do that. So I had to find a way to boss up the Ogerpons and take other ways of knocking out her Pokemon, and it was close, but I was able to win and go 3-1 at that point.
All right, so 3-1 going into round 5. So that put you in the top 1 or 2 tables at that point, right?
I was at table 2 at that point, I believe, because we had someone at 4-0. So and I couldn't. So someone was at 4-0, so I wasn't at that table. I was one below that.
Okay, so with that going into round 5, I know you were telling me off stream kind of some confusion that happened. So tell me, we'll go into that a little bit. So tell me the beginning of that. So how did the beginning, like pre-match of round 5 go?
So going into round 5, there was 4 of us that wanted to look at the standings because we all knew we were close to being in Top Cut, and in Top Cut was only 4 people. So we're trying to figure out if we should ID, if we're safe. And I was talking to my opponent, who was 301 at that point, so I got up paired into that match. But with me being 3-1, going 3-1-1 would have been bubbling into Top Cut, and I did not want to chance it. So I just went ahead. So I made the decision to play it out.
Yeah, so you and I are talking about the math, and even before like you even got into what everyone else's record was, when you say, I'm 3-1 round 5, should I ID? I go, no, you'd bubble immediately. And that's part of playing in a competitive scene. Like, you just know that a certain record is a natural bubble. Yeah. And that's part of writing that out. Like, I haven't been doing... I would say, the last time I did a competitive season was, 5 years ago at this point? And I remember, all right, 3-1-1. In a top 8, you're for sure in. In a top 4, it's, who did you play?
Yeah.
And your opponent being 3-0-1, of course he wanted to ID. He was guaranteed to make it.
Well, he honestly didn't care. But I'm like, hey, man, I want to play it out. He was like, okay, fine. So we set up, we play, and we flipped the coin, and he was like, okay, Dean, you go first. I'm like, okay, not a problem. My deck I can deal with something with going first. That's why I like playing this deck. Going first or second isn't more or less bad either way or good either way. I can make either situation work for me. So we set up, he flips over, and I know he's playing Red Drago. He knows I'm playing Cloth because we talked before the tournament started. And he starts Cleffa. I'm going first. And I was just able to set up my board and donk him before he even had the chance to play.
So you were able to poison KO the Cleffa turn 1.
Yeah.
Your turn going first. He didn't even have a turn 1.
He did not. And
and
he knew that was a risk when he played that down. I remember setting up and he laughed. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Because I played him before. He knows my deck. I know his deck. So I win within 30 seconds, my second donk of the day. And this is where the fun story comes in.
And this, I think, there's a limit to this as well. Once you kind of
so with that,
once you get through the story itself.
Yeah, so with this, he goes 3-1-1. I go 4-1. So I know I'm in the top cut based on how everyone else's record is. And he thought, he was like, okay, I'm out. There's no way. It's going to be like 1-5-0 person and everyone else is going to be 4-1. So he leaves. So we're like, okay. And as we see the matches coming in, we realize, oh, shoot. He could make top cut at 3-1-1. We had no idea. And by the time we realized this, is like the rounds finish. A round's 30 minutes, so he's long gone. And lo and behold, he actually gets third seed. I get second seed. We had someone at 5-0, and then we had someone else at 3-1-1 as well.
Yeah, and him being 301, he should have known his resistance was high already naturally.
Yeah, but I think he was thinking that there's going to be like 1-5-0 and everyone, and there'll be more. So what happened was some matches naturally tied. So we had a couple 3-1-1s that made it in. So he thought there'll be more 4-1s than what they really were. So I think that's what happened, because you typically don't see natural ties going into the last round at the high tables. Someone usually wins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But even though, like we just talked about even before the match started, 3-1-1 was going to be bubble. So he should have known, hey, even if I lose, I have a chance of getting in. And it sucks because it sucks getting donked, and that's how you kind of end your day. But he should have been like, oh, I got donked, but I'm 3-1-1. I still have what, 10 match points? Like, that's still a magic number.
Yeah. So at the end of it all, it was determined that he dropped from the tournament, and so when we got into top cut, everyone, since he was third seed, the fourth seed went to third, and fifth seed went up to fourth. So that way we kept the integrity of the tournament, and we had 4 people playing top cut instead of him playing me again. And since he wasn't there, I get the automatic win to the finals.
Yeah, I think that was the right decision to consider it a mid-round drop instead of end-of-round drop, which does matter.
Yeah, it does.
Does matter, because it being considered a mid-round drop means that you would have been given the win either way, and then he would have been removed from the calculations of the final end of round 5 stats. If he would have been considered an end of round drop, he would have still had his place and then get removed before pairings. So yeah. I think that was a smart decision by the TO to consider the timing of the drop in order to give a proper top cut that give every player the fair opportunity to do a semifinal than a final.
Yeah, it reminded me of the situation with Worlds, with promoting the player that lost in top 8 to top 4. I know it's not 100% a 1-to-1 situation, but the more important part was to keep the integrity of the tournament, and that's what the TO did.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we're now in top cut. 4-1, second seed. So what was your top 4 match?
So my top 4 match was my third Regidrago. Very well-known player in our area. Great player. I respect him a lot. And yeah, we played 3 games. He teched for the cloth matchup in his list. And yeah, I was able to somehow beat him. It was close, stressful. This was my first best of 3 game in forever. I think since Charlotte of January when I played in that tournament. I haven't really done. The only other regional I went to was Orlando, and I didn't play in that. I staffed it. So it's playing best of 3 is much different than playing best of 1. And it definitely reminded me of that. Yeah. it was an eye opener. I know I have a lot to work on for when I go to Toronto this weekend, but yeah, I was able to beat this Regidrago. Everyone says that Regidrago is a favorable matchup for Cloth Trapgos. With the right player, it is not. It is close.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially when you get the top cut, like the player skill ceiling is much higher.
Oh
Unless
yeah.
someone's just had a really, really lucky day. But with top 4, those situations are harder and harder to come by. So you're now in the final of your first ever top cut. What was your final matchup?
It was a rematch of round 1.
It was your round 1 opponent.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was my round 1 opponent. So we started the stream with Miraidon Cloth Trapagos, and we ended stream with Miraidon Cloth Trapagos.
Gotcha. So how did the finals matchup go compared to the round 1?
So the finals matchup, I was able to take game 1. I got the easy donk, or not donk, but I was able to knock him out first. And like I said earlier, this matchup is whoever can take the first 2 prize cards, typically. So I was able to get that. Going to game 2, he took 2 prize cards. I couldn't set up at all. I dead drew. And go into round 3, and he whiffed on his electric generators. So I believe he actually took the first 2 prize cards, but I was able to come back to his only attacker, knock that out, and he wasn't able to get the lightning energy in play. He actually attacked with the Zapdos.
Oh, wow.
I think he was just trying to offset the prize trade for me. But I was in... He also knocked out the stadium because I played the Aerosio Underdefs and limited my board. And he also took out my Latias. So I played the Latias EX to help get my attackers in play. But the list that I play more above normal amount of switch carts. And I kind of saw this coming. So I was able to keep the switch card and was able to draw into my last double triple energy to switch out whatever he had trapped in the active and get my last 2 prizes. And I won my first cup.
Yeah. No, he sent me, like, legitimately, I get a text at like 7 o'clock on Sunday being like, so I did a thing this weekend, and it's just a picture of your champions mat. I was like, oh, so you won your cup? He goes, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm not sure how many more cups I'll go to this season. I really wanted to go to this one just because it was practice for me for Toronto. I'm not really planning on going to any more regionals. Maybe Atlanta if I can swing it. But this solidifies what I want to play in Toronto. Granted, I knew I was going to play a cloth deck one way or another. I'm just super comfortable with it. I know it's gained a lot of traction, so I may not be playing a road deck technically anymore.
But it's been your pet deck for so long. Like,
yeah,
no one can ever say you're jumping on a hot deck. It's like, no, you've been right. You've been the conductor of this train for a while.
Yeah, it's just trying to figure out what the best 60 is, and I like the Trapgos version of it. It definitely opens up a lot more possibilities and a lot more plays than what the vanilla list did. The vanilla list is better for if you want to just go pure single prize. You have more options to do that versus this list for sure. But having that Trapgos as a backup attacker means so much, and having the pressure in the beginning with the Petron, it just does something with your gameplay. You have to be aggressive. This isn't a sit back and just kind of chill deck. Your goal is to take the aggression. So that's something I've learned with this deck. I like this deck. We'll see how it goes in Toronto. I may make day 2 with it, or I may be at the side events on Sunday right before my playing. So we'll see.
So let's pivot into looking at Toronto. You talked about Cloth being the hot deck of the moment for everyone. What do you think is going to be let's talk about two different things. Let's see what's going to be the story of Toronto, and then what's going to be what you think will be like the finals.
So the story, that's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a homecoming for the Canadian player base. We have a lot of top players that are from Canada, specifically in the greater Toronto area. And I think this is just going to be a opportunity to let them shine and just have them show like why this major city, this major metropolis is home of the best players in the North American region.
Okay. And then what do you think is going to be the finals?
That's tough because we're in such a diverse meta. I honestly don't know. Because if you look at Bogota and you look at Perth, you see, yes, it's the same old top decks that everyone's playing, but that is a list of what, 10 to 12 decks right now? It's not like the Triangle where the top players are playing the same 3 decks. Like you have, of course, you have Regidrago, but like Rory Moon made an appearance at Bogota. There's that new Dragapult Thorns. Raging Bolt is still hanging around. Charizard is making another resurgence. You have this cloth deck that's popping up. Miraidon is actually really strong in this meta. Control is still there, even though with how people can retreat, players are still doing well with Snorlax Stall. Lugia is still popping up. Goldango is still popping up. Gardevoir is still around. There's a lot of decks that can do well. It's not like the broken Lugia deck from Toronto 2 years ago. So that's a very tough question. I want to say it's going to be Drago versus something. I don't think it's going to be a mirror match, even though the last couple tournaments have done mirror matches. But I think it's going to be Drago versus some other deck. I just can't pick which one.
No, I agree with the Drago final. I think Drago is such a popular deck. Like it's 20% of the meta right now across like every single metric that you can look at. So I definitely think that a player is going to pick up Drago and just have a very easy, hot route to the final. I think this, in terms of my storyline to watch, I think this could be the debut or re-debut of Lost Zone Box. I think it's now had a couple weeks to kind of be brewed and kind of played around with. I think that the Pikachu EX ad is going to be something that now, when you face Lost Zone, you're going to expect Pikachu, but Pikachu is such a new card and such a strong add to that archetype that it's already been a hard out to begin with, and Pikachu's just going to make it harder. So I would not be surprised if you saw Lost Zone in the top 8 or in the top cut of some form.
I could see that. There's not really a lot of ways around that Resolute Heart ability. Drago's not really playing the Hawlucha anymore, so that was an out that a lot of Drago players can't really do. Yeah, and there's really no easy way to get damage onto that Pikachu, so it's really, you're two-shotting that no matter what. Poison is a way around that, but there's not really a lot of poison decks right now. But yeah, I think Lost Box in the hands of the right player, it can go far. As we really at any tournament, you can see that the top players love the Lost Box deck.
No, and that's why I think it's just going to have a resurgence kind of deal. I think this is going to be its kind of coming out party of the new set. Like, I would not be surprised if you don't hear from Lost Zone Box because it's been so quiet for so long, but I would not be surprised if it made a big splash.
Yeah, so we'll see how these players take that list if they do. I've heard that a lot of European players are coming over to this tournament. They historically love going to Toronto, and we can see what is that? The player from Spain that's really Pedro Torres. He loves playing long box, so we can see if those players bring that over here. But I have a question for you, Devin. What archetype do you think is going to make the biggest splash? Or not splash, but I guess bring the most hype? Something like what new deck? Because lately we've been talking about the Cloth Trapagos. It came from Sacramento, and now a lot of top players are playing it. Do you think there's going to be another deck that's kind of going to steal its hype? Or do you think Cloth Trapagos is going to be the talk of the tournament?
I think Cloth Trapagos is going to be the princess of the ball for sure. I think everyone wants to give this deck all the attention, and it rightly does deserve the attention. I don't think there's really going to be anything else that can really take its shine away that isn't new. My guess is to be the closest thing to get that one might be a Palkia Noctowl or some form of Palkia deck that, like, John talked about having Palkia in his Godiango deck, but I think Palkia Noctowl is another way to do damage with a large bench kind of situation. I really don't see how Cloth Trapagos is going to lose its princess status. Like, everyone loves it. Everyone's falling in love with it. It's a shiny new toy on the shelf. I don't think in a matter of 2 weeks that's going to change. But that's why I really do think that Lost Zone Box is something that can be a splash, but not be the bell. You know, it's an established archetype, and it got one new card, but that one new card changes so many matchups and makes the matchups it had really well even harder to beat. So I think I would put my imaginary money on someone with Lost Zone going on a hot run, Cloth continuing its upward trajectory, and then maybe a Palkia Noctowl kind of being the new person to the dance. But I don't really see much of that. Like, I don't feel comfortable really saying yes. Guarantee Palkia Noctowl in top cut. I don't see it, but I can see it making waves.
What if we change Palkia Noctowl to Palkia Trapagos? That's another version of Palkia. We saw a player like Caleb Rogerson do well at it, I think, in Stuttgart. Same concept, but you use the Trapagos and play the Glass Trumpets to help power up other Pokemon. You play Energy Switch, so you can power up like your Radiant Greninja much easier. You can power up the Trapagos just itself and not have the reduction in damage using a DTE and just attacking with 2 water energies. I can see something like that kind of make another, I wouldn't say resurgence, because it hasn't been around that much, but these top players play it, and they play it really well, and they get top 32, top 16 with this list, so it'll be interesting to see if they take another stab at it.
Yeah, and that's where the two synergies of those two cards make so much sense. It's just we haven't found the right combination yet. So I'd be intrigued if that makes an appearance. And if it does, I'd love to see that success rate and just the matchup spreads, because that's a deck archetype that it just works. It always has been good. So
yeah. So Toronto, I'll be there. I'll report back on how I did, whether good or bad, and yeah, it'll just be a good, fun weekend. I will hang out with my buddy Solomon, who we had on the podcast last week. And yeah, we're just excited to play in another regional. So with that being said, let's get off the competitive nonsense, and I think it's time for the road deck of the week.
Yeah, this deck, when I saw it, I was like, ooh, what does this deck do? And then I looked at it, I'm like, all right, how does this play? Because when you look at the deck list on paper, it doesn't look like it would work. Like, you get the idea of it, but it seems just a little too clunky.
So, what deck are we talking about?
So, this deck is based on the Okidogi deck, a card. And it is a hybrid single prize attacker with a 2 prize support set that it basically is I get big, I hit hard.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really cool because it has, like I said, on paper, this Okidogi deck does not seem like it should work. But it does.
Yeah, I played a couple games with it. For those who don't know what we're talking about, we'll have the deck list in the show notes, and we'll have the video coming out on Friday, the day after this episode is published. This made a debut on stream in, I believe it was Louisville. It was played by a Pokeparent. They interviewed him, and he actually went 5-3 in that tournament, which for a Pokeparent that doesn't really play the game, that's amazing. Like, my first tournament, I did not go 5-3. So the fact that he was able to get to a win in and be on stream and win, he showed how this deck plays. It's not exactly the same version, but the skeleton is there. And it reminds me of Cleffa, being a strong single prize fighting attacker, and having the luminous energy on there opens up so many possibilities with this deck.
Yeah, and that card really makes the deck run. So to kind of go over what the Okidogi does, so it's a single prize, 130 HP fighting type Pokemon with the attack for 2 fighting energy good punch. But it has the ability of Adrenaline Power, which says if this Pokemon has any darkness energy attached, it gets 100 more HP, and its attacks do 100 more damage before you apply weakness and resistance. So when you see that combination on the card, you're like, how can you get a darkness energy on it to get the attack boost, to get the HP boost, but you still have 2 fighting energy as the attack cost? And that's, like you said, the luminous energy is the key, because the luminous energy can trigger the ability and be the rainbow. It's basically a rainbow energy, and does all these stuff for the card to really be a two energy attack kind of monster. And it's fun when it works. I will say that, because during like the week I was testing it and playing around with it, and it does really well against a lot of different top meta decks, but struggles really hard against Cleffa.
Yeah. Ironically enough, it was on stream versus Cleffa on Louisville, and it beat it. But I think it's whoever can set up first wins.
Oh yeah,
it's because at that point it was single prize versus single prize, and Cleffa can go around the Okidogi, but the Okidogi can go around the Cleffa. So it's one of those, like, whoever hits first is basically the winner. I played this, and I went against a Iron Thorns deck. They went first, they attached pass, and I just had the nuts in my hand. I was able to, I believe I started the Fezandipiti, but I had the switch, I had the Luminous Energy, I had a Crispin to get the other energy in play, and I was able to just attach all the Luminous in the fighting, switch out to the Okidogi, and you're hitting 170. Iron Thorns is weak against fighting, so you're hitting 340. Excuse me. And I'm sure I made the opponent cry.
Yeah, I haven't been fortunate enough to run into something like that, like in my early testing. Because really, I play a couple games just to understand the proof of concept of the deck. And I've played against a couple of Joltik engine decks, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I just can set up so much faster than Joltik, because Joltik only has 30 HP, so yeah, they spend a turn powering up their other attackers, but by the time they're set up, I'm like, alright, I can set up 2 Okidogis.
Yeah. And I like the ability to do that. As long as you go first, get an energy on your first Okidogi, the next turn you can use your Crispin to help set up your attackers going forward, and then that way you're ahead on getting your attackers powered up without falling behind in the prize race. So, like you said, when this deck works, it is fun.
Yeah, and the only time I've had trouble is when Cleffa just outpaces me, but because Cleffa can start attacking their turn 1, so it's really one of those situations where I think you want to go second with this deck.
Really? I think you want to go first.
I think you run 4 Crispin. I think it's a lot easier to pull the Crispin play than it really seems like on paper. But going first isn't going to harm that deck by any means.
Yeah, what makes it difficult is you have to have either the Luminous Energy or the Legacy Energy to get that Rainbow cost, to get the buff of the HP and on the attack.
Yeah, but that's 5 of your energy, so it's not the most impossible thing to ask, but it is definitely not easy.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, fun deck. We'll have the video up on Friday. Devin has this actually already recorded, and we're editing it as we speak. So be on the lookout for that, and let us know how you like this gameplay and this new showcase idea. If you want more, we can definitely try to get more videos up with it. But for now, we'll just do once a week with the road deck of the week. But yeah, that's this week's episode. Is there anything you think we missed, Devin?
No, I think that's everything for the week. There's a lot happened over the weekend. A lot of stuff's going to happen next week or so. So definitely excited to see how everything kind of unfolds going into the winter holidays and kind of seeing what is going to happen to all these tournaments.
Yeah, so for those who are going to Toronto, I will be there if you somehow find me. Go ahead, say hi. I like to meet the people that actually listen to this. That will make me feel validated that y'all like our content. And yeah, just hopefully I'll have a good time in Toronto with my friends, and I'll let y'all know how that goes. So that is the end of this week's episode. If you have any road deck ideas, feel free to give us a shout. And with that said, have fun playing those sneaky decks. See y'all.
Bye, guys.
Hey, all you rogues out there. We just wanted to take a quick second to shout out our sponsor and one of our home leagues at For Honor and Glory. They have all you need for your card game and TTRPG needs. Some upcoming events they have are on Saturday, October 5th, the TCG Monthly League Challenge. On Saturday, October 26th, the Monthly Video Game League Challenge. Saturday, October 26th, also a Surging Sparks TCG pre-release, as well as Sunday, October 27th, the Surging Sparks pre-release. And Sunday, October 27th, also the Pokemon Go Cup and Pokemon Go Challenge. Remember, you can always go over to forhonorandglory.com and use discount code ROGUE24. That's ROGUE24 at forhonorandglory.com to receive 10% off your entire online order. All right, have fun playing your sneaky decks.